I tried supplements, I tried therapy, I tried everything I could think of. And I think I was just in such a bad spot, like nothing was helping. Cold therapy has been my stabilizer and my rock that I know I can kind of lean on and depend on.
When I was 9, I was diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, and Tourette syndrome. And those have been things that, over the years I've always struggled with. When I was in a 38-degree river, there was nothing else I could think of. And all of the thoughts and the emotions and the things that were too difficult went away.
One day before my birthday, I wrote a suicide note, and my plan is to either overdose headache pills or drown myself. And what I realized, the water that day, it dropped to 5 degrees Celsius, and the moment I dipped in, like a door opens in my head. I'm like, well, what am I doing? I don't want to die. Like, I want to survive.
Welcome to the Uncommon Living podcast, where we host dialogues in human resilience. I'm Thomas Seager. I'm an associate professor in the School for Sustainable Engineering at Arizona State University and the CEO of the Morozko Forge Ice Bath Company. In today's episode, you're going to meet 3 young men who are using cold plunge therapy to overcome serious mental health challenges. The first one experienced an immediate change in his understanding of his life mission, so profound that he started a cold plunge equipment company. The second one has learned to use cold water swimming to taper off his psychiatric medications. And the third one found that a suicide attempt at drowning himself was interrupted by the feeling that he got in the cold water.
This is Matt Kuiper from Desert Plunge, and better known as ColdPlungeCam on Instagram, and Edgars Treimanis, who has flown here from Latvia. They're here because they all practice cold plunge therapy, and they each have a story that is going to reveal a pattern about how cold plunge therapy can be used in a way that resolves mental health issues. And I don't really know what the right term is here. I'm a PhD engineer. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I don't treat patients. I make equipment and I conduct studies. But in these cases, each one of these men found himself struggling with low mood, depression, lack of energy, and none of them were, in the end, willing to tolerate that low quality of life. They each found cold plunge therapy. I've invited them here to talk about those low periods, and thank you for being willing to share it, what you did to get yourself out of there and how you're doing now. If you wouldn't mind, Matt, you're on the end. Would you tell us your story, and then we'll work right down?
Sure. So try and simplify it. I've always kind of struggled with mental health ever since I was a kid. Kind of a low level underlying anxiety, depression. I didn't really know it until I was a little bit older, but it was always kind of manageable, and it didn't really affect my life that much until 2019. We were getting ready to go on a trip out of the country, and then I was leading up to the trip. I was feeling kind of off, feeling weird, different. And then we got on an airplane. I had a panic attack, and I'd never had a panic attack before. But I remember we were going from Arizona to Florida, and I cried the entire plane ride. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced in my life, and I didn't know why. And then that just kind of led. We ended up going to Ecuador, so we were in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, so very out of my comfort zone. And through that, I had insomnia, which led to more anxiety, depression, that just compounded. It got really, really bad. I figured we cut the trip short. I'd come back home, everything would be fine, and I'd be normal again. And that was complete opposite. It just kept getting worse and worse. And I did not know what to do. I was not a fan of medication, but at this time it had been about 2 months, so I decided to try antidepressants. And the side effects from the antidepressants were so bad I couldn't stay on them. I tried supplements, I tried therapy, I tried everything I could think of. And I think I was just in such a bad spot. Like nothing was helping. I couldn't get my brain to reset. So then it'd been about 7 months. Pretty much, I'd have a good week here or there, but most of the time it was really, really bad, debilitating, where I'd be very, very low functional, not being able to do much. So my brother actually ended up talking to me about Wim Hof, and so I started reading up on Wim Hof, and found that cold exposure had helped him with his depression, with breath work. So I found a facility in Arizona, a wellness center that had actually a Morozko Forge. This was October of 2019. And I did my first cold plunge in a Morozko, funny enough. And I did 2 that day. And I remember driving home, and like that fog, that cloud, that darkness that was kind of just hovering over me. Like I could see it, like it was gone. It wasn't there anymore. And I had a sense of humor again. I remember coming home, and I was actually smiling and laughing. And it was shocking how quickly it reset me. And I was a firm believer in it. I started going there every morning, and it was winter time. So then in the evening I would do it in my pool. But then March, right, October 2020, COVID hit. So I ended up building one at my house, and then that's kind of the rest was history. I stuck with it, doing 2 plunges a day for a year, never missed a day. And I will say I did have a relapse like 4 or 5 months later, but I was able to kind of quickly correct myself within a week. It hasn't all been perfect the past 5 years, but this has kind of been, cold therapy has been my stabilizer and my rock that I know I can kind of lean on and depend on to kind of at least help me if I'm going through hard times, manage it and be able to be functional. But for the most part, it's been a game changer in my life. So,
you had a successful electrical contracting business, and you gave that up so you could become an entrepreneur and start selling desert plunge chiller coolers. I can't think of anything worse for a guy with an anxiety issue than to start his own new business. What were you thinking?
Yeah, that has definitely been a struggle. And I also have a lot of control issues too. So add that on top of it, it's got the perfect storm going on. But, just faith, trusting in God and trusting the process that this was the right decision. Like you said, I had it pretty comfortable where I was at, and we're kind of wouldn't say coasting, but I kind of knew what the future looked like, and that to me, that's very comfortable. I like that knowing. But yeah, so this has been kind of a leap of faith, but it's something I believe in, and I think that was the thing that really convinced me, because being an electrical contractor, that's cool. You get to do cool stuff, but like I didn't really have much drive behind that. And I have a purpose and I have a drive behind this, because I know the impact it can have on people's lives.
Do you ever have customers now or people contact you that ask you about your experiences, that are seeking your advice? Yeah,
especially early on when we were smaller, I got to have a lot of one-on-one conversations with customers who kind of told me about their experience similar to mine. And I've got to have some pretty cool conversations, meet a lot of cool people, make some good friends. But I have my story on our website. I'm not afraid to share it. And I think that's one thing people really appreciate is like, hey, I saw your story. I really resonate with that. And just they get it. And then I learn a little about them as well. So.
Yeah, your story is not the only one. We are now getting dozens and dozens of these rich testimonials of people in analogous situations who said, I figured I didn't have anything left to lose, so what the hell, I would give it a try. And The good thing about the cold plunge is you know it's working right away. You might take an SSRI, you might go to talk therapy. You say, I don't know, is it working? Do I feel better? You get into the cold plunge and you know something is happening. By the time you get out, it can be like flipping a switch, at least in that moment, and you reflect on yourself. How can it be so easy for me to feel like a different person? It sounds like you had one of those experiences on your first go.
Yeah, definitely. It was immediate, and that's what I tell people. I mean, I might be an extreme case, but I think at a minimum, you're going to experience the benefits even immediately. Well, it may not be long lasting, but it's maybe for the next 3-4 hours. So if that's what it takes, do 3 cold plunges a day, So
Cam, you are in a slightly different position because Matt lives in Phoenix and it's very hot, and he's got to go, find a spa or something with a Morozko, or build it himself, for goodness sakes, if he wants to get cold. But you have the advantage of living in Idaho. Will you tell us about your experiences?
Yeah, I didn't start as early as Matt. I started in 2021. I moved up to Boise, Idaho in 2020, right out of grad school, and I received a job offer up there, and so moved up there. Didn't really know anybody, and taking a step back, I was diagnosed really early on with all sorts of things. I mean, when I was 9, I was diagnosed with anxiety, OCD, and Tourette syndrome, and those have been things that over the years I've always struggled with, and there's been lots of medications along the way, and other things that I've tried to use to cope, right, and to get through on a day-to-day. When I got up to Boise, I got hit with just like the most blatant wave of depression I had ever experienced. It was something that caught me completely off guard, and I wasn't expecting. And through that process, that first year before I found the cold exposure, I tried everything. I mean, I was still on medication, and I tried therapy. I tried fixing my diet. I tried a lot more exercise, neurofeedback. I've tried all sorts of things. And I got to a point where in 2021, my friend reached out. I had a buddy come to visit, and he saw I lived, yards away from the Boise River, which very conveniently runs all through downtown and through a very populated stretch, and is just this pristine, clean river that I think I was taking for granted having. And he saw how close I lived, and he said, do you ever go in there, like in the mornings or anything? And I was like, no, I mean, I walk by it sometimes, but I don't ever go in. And a similar conversation where he brought up Wim Hof, and we had this conversation about ice baths, and so, started it, and it very immediately became something where it was, wow, in the 2, 3, 4 hours afterwards, I feel just a complete central nervous system reset, and I feel like I woke up from a really good nap. And it was something that it was almost like a feeling as a child you used to have so clearly, and somehow along the way of growing into an adult, right, you don't really feel those things anymore. And so all of a sudden it was like all of that started to come back a little bit. In that first winter in Boise, after the ice bath, this was July 21, my buddy went home, right? And as it started to get into the fall, I made a commitment to myself. I was like, I don't know what else is going to work. I haven't found it yet. But this I know, at least when I'm in there, I at least know what it's going to feel like in the hours after. And I know that it feels really good. And that winter was, I get emotional talking about it, because that winter was really, really hard. But I told myself, I was like, I'm going all winter. I'm not stopping. It's going to be this 3, 4, 5 days a week. I'm going to jump in this water, and I'm just going to feel the current. And it became almost a study on my own, because I hadn't started any social media stuff, right? This was a year before I started any of it. And I didn't know where the therapeutic benefit sat, right, of of all the cold exposure and when I would feel the best and how often and how much and what temperature. I just knew that when I was in a 38-degree river in February, there was nothing else I could think of. And all of the thoughts and the emotions and the things that were too difficult went away, because that cognitive function would drop, right? And then I could just sit there and I could just focus on survival and on breathing and on anything right in front of me, and that was it. That was the only option. And so then began a process of, okay, well, I know if I stay in here that long, that maybe this lasts a little bit longer, and it, probably took some dangerous turns of me just self-exploration, right? Of trying to understand where are the limits to this, and how far can I push, and where does it turn into no longer a benefit, right? Or all those types of things. And so, I think this is just a great setting to have, right? Because there are so many players in the space when it comes to the products, and there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of market share to gain, right? But these are the types of events that are the most impactful and are going to be the most meaningful for folks who want to try and implement something like this in the future, and to figure out what works best for them. And so just really grateful to be here and to be a part of this, and hopefully, help to bring something forward that's going to be helpful to a lot of people.
Cam, Matt told us that he came out of the Morozko, he had his sense of humor again, and it was shortly thereafter that Matt said, I'm going to rearrange my entire career. I'm going to bring my wife and my kids into this new journey. You had so much confidence, so I'm going to say, that you're going to reorganize your whole life around it. And you took a little bit different approach, and I think it's fair to say that it has also changed your life, that it has opened up career or professional possibilities, a new idea of what your future is going to be like. Because at some point you said, I'm going to post this on Instagram. Will you tell us what happened after that?
Yeah, so a year after I started the cold exposure, I just had some feeling, I might have just been scrolling one day, and most of the stuff I was seeing at the time, this is June 2022, so kind of a little bit early on, not too early on, but most of the stuff I was seeing, it just seemed very intimidating for people, right? And it was a lot of athletes, it was a lot of bodybuilders, it was a lot of people who, in peak physical performance, and so I thought, one of my first videos was, I was like, I want to try and bring this more down to earth and help people relate a little bit more, was kind of the first approach I took. And so it was, I sat in there with a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. It was just like, I'm just like some regular kid getting in an ice bath. And it was almost like just this thing. I just wanted to get people to see it as a little bit more approachable. And then from then it was, I'm just going to start sharing the mental health side of it, and not necessarily from a scientific point of view, but from just how it's affected me and just the struggles that I continue to have on a day-to-day. And let's just be as relentlessly vulnerable through that process going forward, and just continue to share it and use the cold as a vehicle to do that and to share that story. And so that's how it's happened.
So you got this huge audience. At some point, I think Ice Barrel probably reached out and said, hey, you should get into one of our things. Are you getting sponsorship deals, or whatever they're called in social media, where they want you to pitch to your audience products and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few, and I worked with Ice Barrel for a while, and I'm grateful for them. And I've kind of opened things up a little bit more now, right? Where it's I'm interested in discovering more products in the space, and in sharing more about it to everybody, and because I think that's where a huge value lies for people is, let me go around and really start to experience more units, more products, and see how I can share that with people. But yeah, there's been some of the brand stuff that has come my way, and it's been pretty overwhelming at times. I still work that day job. I have not quit my job. I don't think I have the risk tolerance you did, right? Where I was just like, I'm just going to hold on to this until I give up, or until they fire me, and then and then go just jump out of the bird's nest. But that's kind of where we're at. Is it's a day-to-day thing for me, figuring out what is this journey going to be, but also just trying to just savor it, just enjoy these types of things fully.
Because of your history as a child, you have more familiarity and experience with the conventional medicine, these institutions of medicine, than Nat or I. At some point, you must have gone to your doctor or your psychologist and said, I think I figured something out. I found something that's working. What was their reaction?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time and there's a few. There's a neurologist, there's a psychiatrist, there's a general doctor. I mean, I've seen all sorts of people, and most of them, they don't know anything about it, right? Yeah. And they only know what they've heard. Yeah. And that's the case I'm finding for most, and it's just because there's, we haven't had either enough time or enough reliable information to really get out to people and enough people to share that. But we're getting there, right? And it's, the whole process, and something I'm sharing now is the process of coming off of all this medication, which has been very difficult and has been a challenge. And that's something that I see cold exposure as a very useful tool to help people learn how to make these changes, right? Where, change and structure and routine is so vital to people. And besides the scientific side of things for cold, I think it is a huge driver of routine and of learning routine, of learning motivation, of determination, those types of things. So it's almost like I see cold as not just a scientific piece, which is very much is, but it's also just this tool that we can start getting people to use to learn how to hold a real strict routine that's going to benefit their health, and implementing cold as one of those things for it. But
you posted, I think, recently that you are now 5 weeks off all your meds?
Off of Klonopin, so
okay.
The benzodiazepine. I'm still on. I've worked a little bit more than halfway off of my SSRI. I've been on SSRIs since I was 9, since the time of diagnosis, so 24 years. I've worked more than halfway off of that over 2023, slow taper. And then with the Klonopin, I turned my focus to that. I held that one, the SSRI constant, and then I turned to the Klonopin and said, it's time to come off of this, because for various reasons, right? But I think at the end of the day, there's so many levers you can pull. There's so many variables in the equation you can adjust for how to feel better. And it got to a point where the medication was the last one that I needed to change. And so I spent January until 5 weeks ago tapering off of the Klonopin, which was hardest time of my life. And yeah, 5 weeks free and clear now. And it's still hard. It's still, anxiety's still here. The lights are still, causing my skin to buzz and all sorts of things.
That's not just you.
Yeah, but it's, I wouldn't change it. I feel so much better then, yeah.
Advice for other people who are thinking, I think coming off the meds is an anxiety of itself. You're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, what if some of those old feelings begin to return? And some people, as much as they want to get off of them, it's the uncertainty of the future. The idea that those feelings might come back is so frightening that it can be paralyzing. Advice for those people? Yeah,
couple things I'd say just to preface. First, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not a medical professional. And two, I would say that this isn't a conversation that only applies to a few people in the room. Someone is on an antidepressant, and their relationship with that can be good and can be bad. And so I think it's a conversation that needs to be had by more people. But my advice to people who are feeling the anxiety of trying to come off a medication or they want to try it, one of the most important things to understand first is that withdrawing from medication, the symptoms that you experience from withdrawal off of an antidepressant many times show up the same way your anxiety would manifest, right? And so you come off of a medication and your chest gets tight, your head starts racing, or your pulses or your heart rate's out of control. Those could very well be symptoms of just withdrawing off of medication and not relapse symptoms that are proof that you need the medication. And I think that's very important for people to understand, is that the anxiety that might spike from starting to come off of the medication is not proof that I'm supposed to be on this medication. It is very likely that it is withdrawal symptoms that take time to alleviate, and we just don't wait long enough.
So maybe give it a minute.
Yeah, give it 4 to 6 weeks at least for each dose reduction. And the last thing I'll say on that I think is really important, is something I've become a lot more passionate about lately, is the speed at which people taper off of medication. 90% of the time is way too fast. And the doctors who are prescribing the medication know nearly nothing about proper taper protocol off of this medication, because they prescribe it in a doctor's visit that lasts on average less than 15 minutes in this country. But then the process of trying to come off that medication should take months, if not a year or more. And so it's really important, I think, for people to understand that the speed at which and the slow, disciplined approach to tapering off of medication is very, very important for minimizing intense withdrawal symptoms, protracted ones that'll last way out in time, and even mental health episodes that can throw people into suicidal ideation and things. I think it's really important to stay very, very disciplined with a taper, and to contact like a compounding pharmacy, which is something that most people don't even know what it is, right? You think CVS, Walgreens, those are your pharmacies to get your medication, but there are compounding pharmacies all over the place that can custom make doses at much, much, much smaller intervals, so that it is easier for people to come off over time. And that's something, it's a little bit specific for here.
Yeah, sounds
but,
pretty helpful.
Yeah, but it's something I've been very, very passionate about lately.
Edgars, we did an interview several months ago, and you told me a dramatic story. The way I remember it is that you found cold plunge therapy in the middle of a suicide attempt. Will you share it?
Yes. So actually, I want to preface this with saying that when I hear both of your stories, as you said, patterns emerge. And I'm especially grateful for you all sharing this thing. And I heard the same thing. It's trying different things, right? You get so desperate. You try everything, therapy, running 6 times a week. You eat better. You cut out every carb there is on this planet of Earth. But I want to start this really saying that I'm lucky. Like, I'm really lucky because I have not gone to war. No one in my family has any terminal diseases. Everyone is happy. Like, I'm loved, like, every day. Everyone texts me, faces. But it was 2 a.m. in 2021. I was working for a health tech company, and the irony here is I fell down to a floor. I was just on the floor, lying down. I felt great there. And in Denmark, a health tech company, no one tells you this, but if it's connected to US, you gotta work long hours. But everything's great in my life at that moment. I'm making good money, I have relationships going on, I'm healthy, all my blood work is great, doing Wim Hof, meditating, transcendental meditation 2 times a day. But I found myself this night on the floor, and I'm texting my dad. It's like, I don't feel like living anymore. Of course, I did that in Latvian, and he says, like, this is the crazy part. There's so many coincidences in this pathway. My dad never keeps his phone next to his bed, just because that day he was repairing his bedroom with mom. He had accidentally left his phone, so he could call me up, and we said, like, okay, let's take 1 week of break, And of course, not working helps. You get a nice little vacation before we go home. So I felt better. went back home, back to Denmark, work. Then a month later, it all resurfaced. I started having lots of suicidal ideation, even though my life was great. And so I agree with my dad. I'll go home, take as long as I need to, do nothing, or work as much as I can. But let's visit every professional we can to understand, is it a gut problem? Is it blood work? So we proceed to go through this list of everything. In therapy, maybe we resolve some relationship problems I had, but she sent me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist puts me on SSRIs that I take for 1.5 years. I switched to different ones. I add some sedatives because I kept getting these episodes where my brain just starts like closing in on me. I feel like every brain circuit is closed, like a closed door. And it started getting this point where just a doctor visit and hearing something new gave me hope for another week. And we went so desperate that I did cold showers for like 5 years at that moment. And I was like, hey, like, what if I immerse my full body? So me and my dad, we started doing cold swims because we lived next to the sea. But also it gave some physical benefits in gym, but I didn't feel like I get that shock. And so it comes to November, I have this psychiatrist visit, I'm completely down, I'm like staring at the ground with my dad, and my psychiatrist says this sentence, it's like, Edgars is doing everything perfectly right. It's like there's no textbook example like what he could be doing better, like drinking better, and I hear that and I'm like, it becomes clear in my head. It's like, oh, life's over. It's okay. It might be like actually my time to go. So one day before my birthday, I feel like I can still die a rock star, type thing. I'm 22. And I leave a suicide note, and my plan is to either overdose headache pills or drown myself. And so I tell my parents, like, I'm gonna go for a jog, normal, no one suspects anything. So my plan was to run as far as away I can and just drown myself.
Really?
And that was the second lucky moment when my dad noticed the suicide note in my bed. And he's like, let me run with you. And I'm like, shit, like, I can't say no, because in my family, like, it would be so out of character for me to say no. I was like, okay, let's run. And so my dad just keeps giving me some questions, and then I'm like, okay, wait, how do I drown myself? And so I start running in front of cars, and my dad just pulls me back, like, no, let's keep running. Like, let's get you some sports in. So we switch to the beach, and I'm like, okay, like, I just really want, like, it's okay. Like, I really want to die. And it feels like very clear to me that I need to do that. And he's, so what he proceeds to do is like what no European or like Latvian dad ever does. And he gives me this warm, big hug. I think it might be the second one in my life from him. And that doesn't really like bring me back to life, but it just like, he gave me like few minutes of like, it's like, okay, maybe now I'm doubting, but he said something like, I don't know, like, for everyone dealing with suicide, like, please, like, don't tell, but my dad, he told me, like, I'll come with you, let's go into the water. And what I realized, the water that day had dropped from the regular swimming temperature that was 13 degrees Celsius or 58 Fahrenheit. It dropped to 5 degrees Celsius to 46, 8 degrees Celsius.
Because it was November?
Because it was November. And it was the first day that, the Latvian winter starts. And the moment I dipped in, I'm like, a door opens in my head. I'm like, well, what am I doing? It's, I felt so ashamed. I was like, no, like, I don't want to die. Like, I want to survive. It's like you get that survival feeling. And I tell my dad, like, I'm so sorry. Fuck, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't want to do that. And you're like, it's okay. Like, we'll come back here tomorrow and we'll buy you like as much ice as you need if you to keep this, And we go back home and I'm like, okay, I survived today. I get to see my birthday, experience that. And we're like, hey, like, let's continue this for a week. Let's just see where it goes. And so we have this little Chinese thermometer we take with us. And what we didn't know is that it showed 1 degree higher than it actually showed. And the reading was for 2 minutes. And so what happened is that we spent the whole week going at this 46 for 2 minutes without knowing that we were doing some kind of protocol of our own. And a week later, it was the first time in my life I felt so alive again. And I even had some, like, I was a very fearful child. Like, I like doing everything by order. I like, okay, follow a career path. But I was like, I felt so free in my life. And I'd like, we go back to the psychiatrist, and she's like, what drugs were you taking? Like, there's like, what did you do? Because in Latvia, like, it's a historical thing to go cold swimming, but no one has ever reported as it cures the depression. So what happened over the next months, we just went through the whole winter swimming every day. It was minus 20 degrees at one day, and we just had these robes. There was a storm coming. It felt so alive. It felt like going through an adventure. And I'm very happy to say that now, 2 years later, I'm finally free of medication. I've tapered off. I'm really wishing Cameron the same, because it is indeed tough, and not a lot of people know how to do it like properly. The knowledge is just not that freely accessible. And so, like, I don't mean to turn this, like, after similar to Matt, I couldn't just go back to my regular job. Now that I felt like, in video games, you get this respawn moment. And I felt like God is, or someone, has given me like, hey, here you go, a second chance. But be very careful, like, what you do with it. And so I love hearing how you are exploring each of your things. And coming from a product design background, I was like, I need to devote something. I need to put my piece into the space. Talking to you 1 year later after all of that, put so many things that there's actually scientific, researchers here putting that into a scientific perspective finally. So I really want to come from the user side. And so we're working on an ice bath timer, connecting the phone, help people find their protocols. We don't claim to cure depression or help others that, but we want to help people get this data and look what works for them, and just do it in a very beautiful and aesthetic way as possible. And yeah, I feel like it's going to be a long journey, and there's many things you need to do in your life, right? But I really feel like if you give ice bathing a try, it will kick you back into life so strong. You want to find what's working for you.
Yeah. There are people watching. I mean, many of them have written to me, and they've shared stories similar to this. There are people who are watching who are sort of cheering because they can relate to your story. How do we reach the people who probably aren't watching and should be?
So the number one thing I love about nature swims is there's always another person on the beach looking at you. And one of the cool things actually that I do love to brag about is whenever me and my dad and my mom now, we go into the cold water, there are 3 kids on the coast. They're like, whoa, that's so cool. And that was even before it was a trend on TikTok. I was like, whoa, there was so much. And then in the summertime, when we go into semi-cold water, then we see some young girls. They're like, let's do it too. And then they run in and they run out. You're like, you need to overcome that fear of just sitting in there. So I do think if you just do it, and if we actually do it more and more, it will normalize itself. It's like running back in 70s, 80s. People would scream at runners, running on the street, what are you doing there? It's like with skateboarding. It's like, why are you destroying public property? I think it's the same with the cold swimming. Ice bathing.
Great. Yeah. I want to, thank you all for sharing. I want to see if I can get out of the way a little bit and allow you to talk with each other. Matt, what stood out for you in the stories that you heard from Cam and Edgars?
Well, what I can kind of empathize with them on is the tapering off medication, because that's something I had to do. I did that when I was actually quite a bit younger, and I remember I did not taper slowly. I remember the just mental torment I went through, almost worse than what the symptoms for the reason why I was getting on. So I can relate with you guys on that, and just the importance of how to come off, because you're right, Cam, doctors, they don't know. Most doctors tell you you can get on an SSRI and you can stop it anytime you want to, and that could kill people. And I also want to say, I mean, there can be a time and place for medications. I think there's a time and place where people may need it, but for me, I couldn't stand it because of the side effects. But that kind of stood out. But I love your story about how you found. I mean, it just like.
It was intuitive.
Yeah.
It's like my body knew. Like, I lived to the sea like 16 years of my life, and it was always there.
Yeah, amazing. But I want to try nature swims more.
Yes.
That's kind of what I got out of that too.
You come visit us.
When it cools off, Tom, you and I will go up north or something.
Yeah, let's head up to Payson or something. Let's get in the mountain creeks. Yeah.
Come on up to Idaho whenever you
I
guys
will.
want to show you.
If you're more adventurous, come to Oslo to the public saunas. It's a wonderful time there every time.
But like you said, I mean, about your story being intuitive and it just like making sense for your body. I mean, isn't that what cold water, like, isn't that what's happened over who knows how long, or like thousands of years, right? All of a sudden, we're having a conversation here trying to introduce people to cold water again, right? Like it's been around, and somehow we've just moved so far away from that. And so just getting back to things that are intuitive, that makes sense.
It's anonymous ice agers, yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't think we were actually designed to live in comfort like we do.
Yes.
We're supposed to be uncomfortable, and that's the intention. But we've just become so used to being comfortable, and once we get out of that comfort zone a little bit, we think something's wrong, right? So we become so soft, I think, unfortunately.
And I think that's also a great segue. Like what I hear in both of your speeches about relapses. Like many people, like they say, right, ice bathing helped them, but we oftentimes keep it silent that we had these relapses even after these breakthrough moments. But what I found really interesting, that you both, even in those relapses, you saw that it worked. Like you came from such a hole before that you're gonna survive that relapse, and that's really it's really awesome.
Yeah, like putting it back into a routine. I mean, one of the hardest things for me, like I said, was just this year coming off of the Klonopin. But it was more learning, like to put myself in just a really strict routine, like day to day, because, as you know, when you're tapering off the medication, it's like every little thing you change, it becomes hard to tell. Especially something like a benzodiazepine, it's like it becomes hard to tell what's real and what's not real, and what's due to withdrawal. And so the cold all of a sudden just became one like pinnacle piece of this routine where I'm going to keep everything really consistent every day that I know is contributing to my mental health, to my wellness, my overall well-being. And then just stick to that. I mean, it could be listening to the same exact music, eating the same foods, just doing the same thing that is good for you. And then that way, when something's off, or something doesn't seem right, it's like, okay, now I know this is withdrawal, or this is the medication, and it's like, it just helps to have tools like the cold water to help you learn the self-awareness piece of what it's like to, just connect more with your body. So.
And I like how you also intuitively find this consistency, right? That it works for you. And I love how, there's this back to nature, like going back to nature. It's like, I remember that going through this, like, I was like, my intuition was saying one thing, but I knew like I need to trust the professionals because they have helped people before. And I find like that's so these experiences allow us to trust our intuition way more. Like, not give like full control, of course. Yeah, there's power in numbers and time, but yeah, on the same boat with you, man. Yeah. Consistency is key.
You've probably been doing this. I mean, if you started in 2019, you're like pioneer when it comes to the cold exposure stuff, you know. So I mean, how is that? Like, what have you noticed that's changed just in the space, you know, since you started?
Man, yeah, you're right. Like in 2019, there was not a lot of people doing this. I think you were around like right around that time.
I was scared for my life in 2019, and it wasn't COVID. I thought I was going to die of prostate cancer. And I'm not saying that I understood any of it. Like, I'm just saying these were the fears that were running around in my head. And I'll be damned if I was going to go have a prostate exam, which might seem like totally illogical. But the stories that I'd heard from other men were more frightening to me than the idea of dying from prostate cancer. So I said, I'm not getting a biopsy because they'll just schedule me for surgery, and I'm not going to live the rest of my life with the adverse effects like erectile dysfunction or incontinence that often result from a prostatectomy. I said, I'm going to find something else. So I got myself into the ice bath every frickin' day because I was so afraid. Well, now I don't have a prostate problem. So sometimes people will come at me. You know, I'm a faculty member at ASU. I teach in engineering, and I'm a scientist, and I'll go on Instagram or whatever, and I'll start talking about the science, and they'll say, he's just trying to sell more ice baths. He's not credible. He's conflicted. It's true. I have a conflict of interest. Every research scientist in the world has a conflict of interest because there are the motives that the funding agency has. How does the research get funded? And every researcher must speak to those motives while they're trying to do this science. So the question is, how do you manage the conflict? And some people, they don't like my sort of dual role, but I think they get the order wrong. It's not that I started an ice bath company and then I started looking for the science that would support ice baths. I found out how powerful like doing ice baths was. And there's no such thing as an ice bath company. We need more reputable, honest cold plunge equipment providers so that people who don't live, you know, in Boise next to the river, so that people can access this even if they live in Phoenix. So my story, although I relate to travel anxiety, I relate to these childhood experiences, my story is a little bit different because I ran the hell away from medications or allopathic medicine and right into the ice bath as soon as it was introduced to me. Which kind of brings us back to 2019, and it's very early, and the only people doing it are like trying to get in the Guinness Book of World Records, or I don't know, they're on some yogi mountain or something like that. And now it is beginning to go more mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there wasn't really anybody talking about it, and so I'm trying to think about what's kind of changed. I mean, you know, the past 2 years, you got people like that really believe in it and know why they're doing it, and then you have people just doing it because they think it's cool, right? And then a lot of the other things that kind of bother me too is just there's so many companies, like Tom said, that are not reputable, that are just popping up because they see the opportunity to sell a product, right? And they have no idea what they're selling, they have no idea why they're selling it, and they don't stand behind their product. So yeah, it's been like, I see it becoming as a really popular fad, but then there's like two groups, right? Like, hey, this is the cool thing to do now, and then there's starting to become a lot more awareness, which is really cool, on the health benefits of it. And there's a lot more research and science going into backing why it's good for you. So I think the awareness has been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, the economics, like it's early. It's almost like early adoption, so many players in the space, right, trying to compete, and so I think in that sense it's really exciting right now because there's all sorts of people trying to play, but I mean over time, right, and that's just kind of how the economics works, is I mean a lot of those players are going to fall out for various reasons, whether it's because they don't compete on price. They don't compete on value or on their word, right? And what they stand behind and what their mission is. And so I think right now, yeah, it seems very crowded. There's a lot going on. I think it's exciting, but it's going to take a little bit of time, for some of that to kind of die down and for your more established incumbents to kind of own the space, if that makes sense.
But Kim, what about some of those accounts? Some of them are big, and they'll say, cold plunge is the dumbest thing you can do. Or they say, that guy's going to burn out his adrenals and he's going to look like he's 60 years old before he turns 40. And do they ever come after you on social media like that?
I mean, I haven't, I don't know. I think I'm kind of blessed with most of the people who ever post anything. It's nice. I have had a few of those cases, but I don't, I think it's been happening a little bit more when you're seeing a big trend of social media right now are the daily streaks, right? Of it's day 470 of me taking an ice bath, or
I don't know, what's Jordan Ferrioni up to now?
Yeah, I mean, which props to him. He's gonna, he's gonna hit 2 years pretty soon, I think, and I think he's changed a lot of people's lives with the message that he shares in those daily posts, right? But I think that's caused a lot of these people to come out with their, they must be supporting this daily cold plunge that's so intense and everyone needs to do it. But it really is about learning your body. And I think that's a huge part about the cold exposure is let's not do a streak just to do a streak, but let's go in there and start to learn all the different variables that affect your reality. And I mean, for me, it started as a kid with I didn't realize that when I played too many video games, my Tourette's started to go out of control, and like it took a little bit to make that connection, right? But I think the cold, it becomes that type of tool where it's, okay, let's start to learn how much time, what temperature is optimal for me. I know there's research coming out, right, that's suggesting certain amounts of time, certain temperatures that are beneficial for whether it's a metabolic boost or it's a mental health, dopamine increase, right? I think ultimately it comes down to the person, and it's just the need to really learn their ability.